The more important to your soul's growth, the stronger the resistance will be. I want you to imagine a tree standing right in the middle of a sunny meadow. The second that tree appears, it casts a shadow, right? Well, that tree is your dream, your ultimate true calling. And the shadow? That is the immense, sometimes completely paralyzing fear and resistance you feel whenever you try to pursue it. The bigger the tree, the bigger the shadow. But here's the secret. It's actually a compass. That intense, gut-wrenching fear points precisely toward what you absolutely need to be doing most. Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to lay out a strategic briefing for completely, permanently defeating your inner procrastination. We're pulling this tactical framework directly from the brilliant insights of Stephen Pressfield, a guy who knows exactly how to smash through creative blocks and just get the work done. So here is our battle plan for today. We'll be covering the force of inner resistance, the amateur versus professional mindset, the daily physical rehearsal, invoking the higher muse, and finally, what it actually means to never pull the pin. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a tangible, totally free framework to overcome that self-doubt and finally ship your most important work. Let's start with Section 1, the force of inner resistance. To really grasp what we're talking about here, you have to understand that Pressfield is an 82-year-old former Marine reservist infantryman. So he doesn't approach the creative process with, soft inspirational metaphors. He treats it as a literal combat zone. So the crucial point is that resistance, and we're talking resistance with a capital R here, isn't just some passive, lazy feeling you get on a Sunday afternoon. No, it is an active, hostile enemy living inside your own mind, and its entire mission to stop you from evolving and self-actualizing into the person you are actually meant to be. And how exactly does this enemy come at us on a daily basis? Well, it's incredibly sneaky. It disguises itself as perfectly rational fear, or it nudges you toward endless social media distractions. It demands absolute perfectionism, which sounds good, but really it just freezes you up so you never finish anything. And here is perhaps its most dangerous tactic. It actually uses the doubts of your well-meaning family and friends. When you start trying to grow and break out of your cocoon, the people closest to you can inadvertently act as agents of resistance. They unconsciously try to sabotage you, simply because your new growth threatens their comfort zone. Crazy, right? Which brings us to a real hard look in the mirror. Are you sitting around just waiting for inspiration to magically strike before you do your soul's work? Or are you showing up like a pro? Because this is the fundamental, ground-level choice you have to make before you can even hope to defeat this hostile force. Moving right along to Section 2, amateur versus professional mindset. Flipping this mental switch is the ultimate antidote to resistance. And honestly, the best part is that this shift in perspective costs absolutely $0 to implement right now. Just look at the stark contrast here. An amateur works only when they feel like it. They fold to adversity, like catching a cold or just being in a funky mood, and they take bad reviews entirely personally. But a professional shows up every single day. Think of incredible athletes, guys like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. A professional plays hurt. They ignore that nagging inner critic, and they simply do the work, completely regardless of how they happen to be feeling on any given morning. To actually implement this, Pressfield uses this really fascinating screenwriting trick. You treat your creative output like a one-person corporation. Essentially, you view yourself in two distinct parts. You are the CEO who pitches the big ideas and runs the business, sure, but you are also the blue-collar employee who just clocks in and executes the work without any judgment. Doing this completely detaches your fragile ego from the daily grind. Section 3, the daily physical rehearsal. Let's see how this builds from a mental shift directly into physical action. Even at 82 years old, Pressfield maintains this grueling routine of going to the gym at 4:45 in the morning. And let's be real, he hates getting up that early. It sounds completely miserable, frankly. But he does it because facing that intense physical friction actually greases the wheels for the mental friction he knows he's going to face later at the keyboard. By conquering the gym before the sun is even up, he builds this daily armor. He knows for a fact that writing is absolutely not going to be the hardest thing he has to do that day. So, with that armor on, the professional approaches the actual work with a rigid, completely distraction-free routine. First, you dive in immediately. No scrolling the internet, no checking the news, nothing. Second, you work with pure intensity. Pressfield does this for about 2 hours, and he actually does it in a slightly uncomfortable chair so he doesn't get too cozy. And finally, you stop the very second you hit diminishing returns, like when typos or careless mistakes start showing up. A highly focused 2-hour block prevents burnout and is infinitely more effective than, say, 4 hours of just distracted struggling. But, this brings up a really fascinating mystery. If you're just sitting there in your uncomfortable chair, executing this intense 2-hour routine in total silence, where do the actual breakthrough ideas come from? Which takes us to section 4, invoking the higher muse. Because once you've put in that gritty, blue-collar physical work, you have to open yourself up to a much higher voltage. Listen to this invocation from Homer's ancient Odyssey. Pressfield actually recites this out loud every single morning before he sits down to write. Now, what's really interesting about this practice is the why behind it. He does it because it completely removes his ego from the equation. He is humbly asking a higher power to tell the story through him, which beautifully shifts the heavy burden of genius entirely off his own shoulders. This is the major shift from relying solely on your own subconscious to inviting what Pressfield calls the goddess or the muse. The professional's job is simply to clear the pipeline so that they're ready to catch these fleeting, whispered ideas. And interestingly enough, they almost never happen while you're just staring blankly at the screen. They hit you when your ego is distracted. In the shower, driving on the freeway, or in Pressfield's case, while taking a break to do the laundry. You have to be ready to catch them immediately before they vanish. And finally, section 5, never pull the pin. We have reached the final phase of our battle manual, and this is all about the absolute necessity of shipping your work to the real world. Long before he was a successful author, Pressfield worked alongside a fruit picker in Washington state, and this mentor taught him a concept from the old railroad days called pulling the pin, which literally meant uncoupling the train cars. In life, it means giving up on a project before the season is over, before it is fully done. The ultimate vow of a professional is that you will never pull the pin. You absolutely must finish what you start. So, what are our tactical rules of engagement for actually finishing and shipping the work? First, recognize perfectionism for what it is. Just another disguise for resistance trying to stall you. Second, accept that your first drafts are going to be flawed. Pressfield write like 15 drafts of a single book. Third, and this is a massive one, do not judge today's work until tomorrow. When the session is over, just close up shop. And finally, when it's ready, ship it, even if it bombs entirely. Pressfield once wrote a King Kong sequel that got completely destroyed by critics. But a true pro? They just start the very next project the very next day. And that leaves us right here. If you truly knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that you were standing on the battlefield of your own potential right now, staring down that massive shadow of your own dreams, would you surrender to resistance today, or would you finally flip the switch and turn pro? The choice is entirely yours.